This is section 1.3, solving equations with variables on both sides. Go ahead and fill out your name, date, and period. The objectives for today: use the properties of equality to solve linear equations with a variable on both sides. That means that we are going to solve equations by adding to undo subtraction, or to divide to undo multiplication. Those are the properties of equality. Identify whether linear equations have one solution, infinitely many solutions, or no solution. Let's start with solving equations with variables on both sides. We have 100 parentheses, so that's being grouped, v minus 0.2. And the first step that we're going to do is to distribute. We're going to simplify it by getting rid of the parentheses. We did this with our algebra tiles. So we have 100v, remember the grouping, minus, what's 100 times 0.2? You can do that in your calculator. It's 20, right? And negative 10 is going to be distributed because this is a group. There's negative 10 groups of 5v plus 0.8. So if we multiply the negative 10 times what's in the grouping, we get negative 50v minus 8. Now we have variables on both sides. So after we distribute, so the first thing we did was we distributed. That was, we got rid of the grouping symbols. The next step that we're going to do is get the variables on one side. And to do that, to get them on one side, we have to undo what's being done to the side that they're on. So since we have minus 50, we're going to add 50v. And we will add it not to the 20, but to the 100v. It's like x's. We'll put all the x's together, we're going to put all of the v's together. So that gives us 150v minus 20 equals, these cancel, leaving us with negative 8. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the properties of equality. So we're going to add 20 because we're trying to get v by itself. So if we have 150v minus 20, the last thing I said was minus 20. So we're going to add 20 to undo that. And then these 20s cancel, leaving us with 150v. Each step of the way we get more simplified, equals 12. 150v, that means we're multiplying by v. So to undo the 100 times v, we're going to divide by 150. Okay, so the 150s cancel. So we divide by 150. That leaves us with v equals, and I'm going to put this in my calculator, 12 divided by 150. That gives me 0.08. And that is our answer. Okay, so to review the steps, the first thing we did was we distributed. We got the variables on one side. We added 20 to both sides. We divided by 150. Okay, the next equation It has fractions, so I will do a little review with fractions with you right now, how we multiply fractions. If you buy a scientific calculator, like a TI 30 something XX, it has fraction capabilities, and I would be happy to teach you how to use a calculator that does fractions. Speak to me about that, and I will show you what kind of calculator I'm talking about, if that's something you'd like to purchase. So our first step again is going to be distribute. So we will distribute on this side first. That means we're going to multiply 5/8 times 16D, and we're also going to do 5/8 times 24. That's distributing only on the left side of the equation. On the right side of the equation, I'll use blue, you're going to multiply 6 times D and 6 times -1, because that's the grouping. So that we can do without even showing our work. 6 times D is 6D, and 6 times -1 is -6. And then don't forget that we also have this +1 that we need to add in at the end. All right. So like I said, I'm going to review the fraction part with you. So this multiplication here, 5 times 16 divided by 8. So the 16 we're going to put over 1. You could do some cross canceling here if you know how, but I'm just going to show you the simple way. We have 5 times 16, that's 80, and we have 8 times 1, that's 8. So that piece becomes 80 over 8D, and yes, that can simplify, plus this piece, 5/8 times 24. So I'm going to multiply across the top. 5 times 24 is 120, and 8 times 1 is 8. So across the top and across the bottom. That equals, now in this step, I'm going to simplify. I'm going to leave the 6D, but I'm going to take the -6 and the +1. I owe $6. I give that person $1. I still owe $5. So you subtract and it stays negative, right? So I like to think of money every time I do positives and negatives until you start to learn the rules. So in this step, we just simplified by doing -6 plus 1. Okay, and on the other side, we just multiplied the fractions. So we took care of the fractions. Just going to abbreviate it, fractions. Now, I'm going to simplify the fractions, okay? So in this step, we're just moving down the line, simplifying as we can. 80 divided by 8 is 10D, and 120 divided by 8, did that in the calculator, is 15. So simplify. Simplify. And the blue side of the equation, I'm just going to bring it down. There's nothing more to simplify there. Okay? So those are equal. Now, we have to, so we distributed first. That was the first thing we did. We distributed. Then we just simplified all the way down. The next step that we're going to do is get variables on one side. So variables on one side. Minus 6D from 10D. And I didn't put it under the 15 because the 15 doesn't have a D. So this becomes 4D, right? 10 minus 6 plus 15 equals, this cancels, leaving us with just minus 5. See how it's getting smaller and smaller as we go? It's how we started in the beginning. It was a long equation, and it's just getting more simplified. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to subtract 15 because it's 4D plus 15. The last thing we did to D, the last thing I said was plus 15, so we minus 15. So subtract 15. Notice I didn't put it under the D, right? So this cancels, the 15s cancel, leaving us with 4D on the left side. And on the right side, negative 5 minus 15 is negative 20. And we have one more step. What are we going to do now? Yeah, we're going to divide by 4 because it was times 4D, right? We have 4 D's. We divide by 4 and it cancels because 4 divided by 4 is 1, leaving us with just 1D. Okay, so this for the step we divide by 4. So we have D equals 20 divided by 4 is 5, so negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. And you can check this. You can put negative 5 back into our equation, and we should get two equations, or an equation that is equal to itself. Understand equations with infinitely many or no solutions. An equation that is true for all values of the variable has infinite, does that make sense? Infinitely many solutions and is called an equality. So what does that look like? Here we have t minus 27 equals minus 27 minus t. So we need to solve this. All right, so the first step, there's no distributing, so we're going to get variables on one side. Variables on one side. That's usually what we need to do if there's variables on both sides. We got to get them on together. So to do that, I'm going to add t to the other t. If I add t to t, I'm going to have two t's. Just like with our algebra tiles, you remember the x's? If we put an x with another x, that's going to be 2x. So this is going to be 2t. Bring down the minus 27 equals, bring down the minus 27. Okay, and now I'm going to add 27 to both sides. And when I do that, I get these 27s cancel, 2t equals 0. The next step is to divide by 2, and the 2's cancel. T equals 0 divided by 2 is 0. So that would not be an equality because the only time that this is true is if t equals 0. Right? Because the only time that negative 27 would equal negative 27 is when t is 0. Okay, on the next problem, we have distributing. So we need to get rid of this grouping by multiplying. So in this case, the first step is to distribute, just like the other problems. So we have 16 times 4 is 64 minus 16 times 3m, because we have 16 groups of 4 minus 3m. So 16 times minus 3m is minus 48m. That's going to equal, we're going to distribute the 96. So just like we did with the fractions, the 96 is going to be over 1. 96 times minus m is 96m over 1 times 2 is 2. And then we have plus 1, so we have 96 groups of 1, so that's just 96 times 1. I can simplify this fraction, so that's going to be my next step. Simplify the fraction. So this piece becomes 96 divided by 2, 48. So negative 48m. Bring everything else down. So plus 96, the equals, and that whole piece 64 minus 48m. All right, we have minus 48m on both sides, which is going to be interesting. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to get the variables on one side. So when I add 48m to negative 48m, variables on one side. Well, it cancels on this side, but the problem is it also cancels on the other side because it's equal, or they're opposite, I'm sorry. A negative and a positive are opposite, so they both cancel, which leaves us with a problem. We have to bring down the 64, we have to bring down the equals, and we have to bring down the 96. This is not true. 64 does not equal 96, and so this is a no. That's not true. So this equation has no solution. I would like to show you one more example of an equality when any answer will work. So let's have 2x, or 2 parentheses x minus 1 equals 2x minus 2. The first thing that we'll do here is we will distribute. So distribute here. You get 2x minus 2, right? Because we have two groups of x minus 1. When we distribute, we get 2x minus 2. That equals 2x minus 2. What's happening here? So the first step was to distribute. The next step is variables on both sides, or variables on one side. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And what happens here is the 2x cancels, and it cancels on both sides, leaving us with negative 2 equals negative 2, right? And unlike the last problem when we had 64 equals 96, which is never true, negative 2 equals negative 2 is always true. So this is infinite solutions, because no matter what I put into x, this will be true. So try 10. If we put 10 into x, on the left side, we would have 10 minus 1, that's 9, and 9 times 2 is 18. On the right side, we have 2x minus 2. So 2, if we put in 10, 2 times 10 is 20. 20 minus 2, that's 18. So that would say that 18 equals 18. No matter what number you choose for x, you will always get something equals itself, because this kind of equation is called an equality. So if you ever get something like this, where it's a number equals itself, then it has infinite solutions, and it is called an equality. Okay, let's turn the page. Using equations to solve problems. The table shows the rates of Uber and Lyft. How many miles do you need to travel for Uber to be a better deal? All right, so we have Lyft. Lyft has an initial fee of $2.75, and then it's $2 per mile. So we're gonna put Lyft. First it cost $2.75, then it costs $2 per mile. So I'm going to write it as an expression, 2.75 plus 2m. Then we have, and I'll highlight that's for Lyft. Then we have Uber, and we'll highlight Uber as blue. Uber is $4.50 for the initial fee plus $1.75 per mile. So we want to know when Uber is a better deal, because $4.50 is the initial fee. That's at first going to cost more than the Lyft, which is $2.75 for the initial fee. So to figure this out, we're going to take these two expressions and we're going to make them equal to each other, because that's what we want to know. We want to find out when they're equal, and then after they're equal, any mileage after that, Uber will be cheaper because the rate per mile is cheaper. So our first step is going to be like the others. We don't have to distribute, but we need to get variables on one side. So I'm going to subtract the $1.75 per mile from both sides. This cancels. So $2 take away $1.75 is 25 cents per mile. Then I'm going to bring down the equals, and I'm going to bring down the 4.5. I'm also going to bring down the 2.75. And we need a little plus in there. The next step is we're still solving for m. So we have 275 plus 0.25m. Now normally the 0.25m would come before the 275. And so the 275 is a little bit further away from the m. So the first thing we do is we want to subtract 275, right? So subtract 275. The first step we did was variables on one side. The second step that we're doing is we are subtracting 275 from both sides. So the 275 on this side cancels. 450 minus 275, using a calculator, 175. Equals 0.25m, because I just bring all of that down. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to divide by 0.25. The 0.25s cancel, leaving us with m equals, how many quarters are in $1.75? Right? We can think of it as money. How many quarters are in $1.75? Well, in a dollar there are 4, and in 75 cents there are 3. So there are 8 quarters and $1.75. What does this mean? What does M equals 8 mean? That M was talking about miles, because remember it was rate per mile up here. So it's 8 miles. After that, Uber will be cheaper. After 8 miles, Uber is a better deal. And then I put a little infographic here, and so this part is up to you to answer on your own, because what you notice and what you wonder about that infographic is possibly different than what somebody else notices or wonders about the infographic. So you need to put down what you notice, one thing, and one thing that you wonder. So a little question that you have about that. And that's it. Thank you so much.